start by introducing Uzair. Uzair Sukhera is a user experience and product strategy expert at mobileLIVE Canada. He has helped to establish and scale design and product management practices over the past 5 years for companies including Telenor, Ideate Innovation, mobileLIVE, and many more. He believes that teams can bring out innovation through carefully designed workshops, facilitating collaboration and co-creation. In today's webinar, Uzair will help us rethink how we can remove friction from user journeys to deliver value. He's an alumnus of Cornell University, and we're excited to have him for today's webinar. So with that, I will, Omer, if you want to start and you can share your screen, and we can get started with the webinar.
Sounds good, thank you. You can hear me okay, right?
Yeah, and Uzair, if you want to share your video, that's up to you. You feel free to do that.
I think I'm sharing okay. I noticed it was frozen. All right, let me share my screen. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Excited to have a good audience here. I would suggest please feel free to ask questions along the way. So I'm sharing my screen. I may not be able to see you or a raised hand. That's how screen shares work. So just if you have a question, either Riaz or somebody from iENGINEERING can give me a prompt and we can have a conversation right there and then. Let's keep it conversational along the way. The purpose is to build shared understanding and knowledge, not necessarily go through the whole material. So it's okay. I'm happy to answer questions along the way. So shall we get started?
Yes, so we'll have about 35-minute presentation and then questions at the end, but I think it may be okay to have questions as we go along while the screen is up on the screen. Yeah.
Perfect. Sounds good. Okay, so what we'll do first is to go a bit beyond user experience and try to understand the whole area of design. And then understand that design is multidisciplinary. There are a lot of different skill sets that are needed. This field has evolved from a lot of different other fields that we see as today. So very few universities, in fact, have user experience as a core degree of even in education. So that's what I want to first establish. Then we would go into sort of the workflow of a good UX practice. And then we have some section about design systems and why they're important. So that's sort of the main threads I would cover for today. So I think we already went through my intro. I'll not spend too much time on that. Let's start off with this one key quote from Steve Jobs. And I think a lot of people in tech industry do look up to Steve Jobs for the iconic design of everything that the company designs. If you've read his biography, you know how much he obsessed about design and design not just look and feel of things, but also how they are structured. I read through his biography and he was so upset with the engineers on PCB layout, something which we don't even see on the MacBook because no one opens the MacBook, frankly. Maybe 1.5% people would open it or the repair personnel would, but he used to obsess about how the lines are etched and whether they're symmetrical or not. So he cared so much about design. But having said that, he was fundamentally of the view design is not just what it looks like or feels like. Design is how it works. And this is something, if you have one takeaway from this session today, this is what I want it to be. User experience is about how it works. How easy is it to use? It's not about look and feel. Look and feel are important, very important, but not the foundational. There are many apps which are really crappy in look and feel, but they're so easy and convenient to use that users forget about the interface. So the other quote I sent in the abstract was, user experience is like a joke. If you have to explain it, then it's already bad, because if you do a good job designing an experience, it should be seamless. People should not talk about experience, because if it works, it works. plain simple. So now, as I said, let's understand how experience design has evolved over time. At the moment, how it is practiced, experience design is very, very multidisciplinary field. Yes, we see a lot of people from arts and graphics background in user experience, but in large organizations, Facebook, and LinkedIn, they have entire set of practices in experience design with people from very different backgrounds. You would see people from background in psychology, anthropology, human behaviors, human factors, systems thinking. There's also an increasing practice of economics. Economists are spending a lot of time and energy understanding how humans make decisions, and that factors into user experience as well. So that's one thing to take away. It's multidisciplinary field. Then let's talk about the next one. So it's multidimensional. So before we go to multidimensional, it's multisensory. So if we talk, and I'm deliberately not saying user experience, I'm saying experience. And experience is general. Going to a restaurant is an experience. Watching a movie in theater is an experience. Going for shopping is an experience. Everything is an experience. And these are all the senses that human beings have. So experience has multiple dimensions. I'll not go into like a theoretical side and bore you to that with all these different senses, but just one small example. You go to a high-end hotel. You enter the hotel, and not only everything looks clean and good and pretty and clean, but also they spend a lot of time and effort into thinking about smell. They have very good quality perfumes, which they have done a lot of research on, that those sense of smells, that particular smell that you would see at a hotel lobby, makes you feel good in general. So that's an experience. So it's multisensory. It's multidimensional. Right now, the last decade, last 20 years, I would say, were about web and mobile. Web has been there for very long, but mobile was the center of the universe for the last 10 years. This won't be the case for the future. And I've been saying this over the last 2 years in many talks and many interactions that I have with companies and organizations, but now we have tangible proof that future is not mobile. Why? Because Facebook just rebranded themselves from Facebook to Metaverse, and they are clearly putting a statement on that future of experience is not 2D, is not mobile apps, is ambient experiences. What do they look like? They look like this. So you can see on the left side, for example, is we live in a world of 2D where Google Maps works like 2D, but future is much different, which is much more feature rich and much more valuable or useful with AR integrations into it. Then how the workplaces are going to shift with hybrid work is the middle picture you can see here. This is, by the way, the picture before COVID. Now, during COVID, our own company in Canada has been involved by several organizations to design virtual campuses. So this is becoming increasingly real, and we will see that by next 10 years, we will see this is all these things that you're seeing here are pretty much normal. The rightmost picture is Facebook, and this was their steps before Meta. What they are showing here is how would you do shopping in future? You won't go to websites and browse and put things in cart. Rather, the shopping cart is overimposed on your own closet. So you're into your closet and you're trying to make combinations of your clothing. So anyway, this is where the future of user experience is headed towards. Why UX matters. Let's also spend a few minutes on it. I won't bore you to death on it, but user experience is not, again, going back to the point, user experience is not about making it fancy and making it pretty. It's about how desirable is it for the users. So the designers have to really advocate for the yellow box here, about the user and understand them, make their life simple. Then there's viability part. So the business teams have to ensure that whatever features we are building or the value we are delivering to users is also we can monetize on it. It's not something we are building for the sake of it, but there's a business model behind it. And all our technology teams are working with our designers and with our business teams to ensure that whatever we are building is technology viable. We can sustain it, we can maintain it, we can scale it, and rinse and repeat. So where great products are at the intersection. So good design helps us reduce time to market. This is a study done by Forrester working with IBM. They quantified how good design practices helped them save money. So it reduced their time by 75%. In projects they were doing in traditional methods versus projects that they were doing with good design practices, they saw 75% savings. And then similarly, design products and experiences designed with good practices also resulted in 50% reduction in design defects later on. Time to market, you can go twice the time to market with good design practices. This is again what IBM Forrester has quantified with lots of different projects analyzed at IBM. It also helps you reduce your revenue. And these are again the numbers from Forrester. Traditional ways versus how you can do it with good design practices. Also, where are organizations using, enterprise organizations using design? You would see on the left side, typically we see software development, product, customer experience. That's where they're spending design, but increasingly they're using design in business strategy. How do we increase value for customers? And we'll go through this in a few seconds into the next slides on how they systematically work with experienced designers to bring in design into the business discussions. Let me pause here to see if there are any questions so far.
There are no questions right now. There's nobody has raised a hand, so we continue.
Okay, so a bit about continuation of the same theme that we had. Then what is the anatomy of user experience? So as I said, it is multidisciplinary. Now this image would tell you in a like more engineering kind of way, if you have to do Venn diagrams, if user experience or experience is the whole domain, you would see there are so many different fields that contribute to it. Architecture, information design, and I'm saying at the edge, for example, right? Human factors, industrial design are at the edge, but let's go towards center. Communication design is very important piece. Copyright is very much of a key element of good design and good user experience. Many times designers ignore this. And in good design practices at Facebook, at enterprise, even let's talk about Verizon, AT&T, they have dedicated teams of content designers because they have realized that in e-commerce experiences, copy is very, very important, more than design as well. So you can see there's navigation design, there's user interface design is only one element of this whole piece. Interaction design. I can share this deck with everybody and they can go through these articles and also read through these images and what do they mean. But that just was to drive home the point that there are a lot of different disciplines that work together in the field of design. If we look at a web page and let's break it down, what are out of the multidisciplinary things, some of them are intangible, like behavioral economics would be what product managers would understand and bring into practice. But some things are very, very tangible on a web page design. There's usability and utility. There's typography. So the font selection. Large organizations spend a lot of time thinking about how fonts should be designed. They even design their own fonts because they want to create their own brand identity and they want that brand to be associated to their font to be associated to their brand. Then there are design elements. There's the links and then there's the layout. So within a web page, there are several key things that we must need to be considered, just like even if we keep aside the visuals part. Again, these are different types of roles as we talked about, right? So you would see content writer, product designer is a person who is very broad skills. And this is what we are seeing more and more in market, that people need people who can do strategy, who can do research, who can do ideation, design, and implementation. And then typically it used to be UI designers were separate. If you're more on implementation and visual design, you are UI designer. And if you are more on strategy, you are UX strategist. Different companies hire differently, but just again, this I will leave it with you to understand these are different roles within design. Okay, so let's go to next section. How do we work as designers with our business owners and our product managers to get to good design? Foundational piece is to understand your users. Many times designers just jump to making interfaces, which is the most lethal mistake. And I want you to cognizantly understand it. Everybody likes to quote Einstein, but not at the risk of like sounding cliche, but we remember that he said if he has like 100 hours, he would spend 90, 95 hours, 99 hours thinking about the problem and 1 hour to solve it. Now, this is also true in case of user experience. A lot of our time and effort should be done to understand the user first. Let's say in case of iENGINEERING, our users, let's say we are building an application uh, let's say measuring the weight of trucks at a weighing station. So let's map out who our users are. It's truck driver, it's the person on the station, what their life is. Do we understand how their life works? Do we understand how many screens are there in front of on their terminal? Is it one screen, two screen? What is the typical screen size that they work on? Uh, what different tasks do they have to do? And when our application and our screen comes in front of them, what is in context of? Like, what are they trying to do? Are they trying to just get in and out, do a weight scale reading, or is this something that is done like every 2-3 minutes? All these things are very important to us to understand. Many times designers say, oh, we don't understand our users, we don't speak to them. You have to push. You have to speak to your managers or your leaders. How can I understand this user better? And then work with your organization to build empathy with them. So that's why this artifact of empathy map is very important. It helps you understand who those people are, how educated are they, how comfortable are they with the interface, how much technology do they use day in, day out, what sort of their interests are, right? What is most important to them to be successful at their job? Is saving time most important to them? Or is there any other factor that is most important, like having the application or the form filled complete is more important, or doing it faster is more important, right? So persona maps are a great way. Again, I'll not go spend too much time into the persona map and how is it built, but I wanted to highlight that this is the key piece. If you're not doing this, you need to learn how to do it. You need to gradually start working with your teams to understand the end users better. Once we understand who our user is, then let's say something is assigned to you. You have to build a flow, you have to build a feature set, you have to build a new interface. Let's write down what is the user goal here. So first piece was who is the user. Second piece is what is the goal. And the definition is, again, this is where typically product managers, BAs would be working with you to define. They write user stories, but don't confuse this with user story. I don't so I expect my team members and product designers to also understand this work. Don't delegate and say BA has written the story, I'm just working from the user story. No, I want designers to also write this in their design tools. That what is the definition? It's the name of the user flow, which could be the requirement, user journey, step, and even like name the user, right? So for example, as a recruiter, I want to scrape personal LinkedIn data. So this is the goal that they're trying to accomplish. As a truck driver, I am trying to get through with my business because I was asked to do weigh scale. I didn't want to, but I want to get through it as fast as I can. So those are their goals. Let's document their goals. Then we have to really break it down in a business process. How does the task flow looks like? So user, so now here the example you are seeing is, for example, for LinkedIn, which is a digital product. It's purely digital. User goes to homepage, user taps on the photos button, and then user views all of their photos and ads. This is easy example. But in case of a application which is more business oriented, you should also factor in steps that they're doing physically, which may not be related to your software. But let's say driver drives through the drive lane. This is one step. That has no implication on your interface, but it's the business process. So first understand the business process, document it, and then think through how we can solve it and make it easy for everybody. Then we should start moving towards wire flows. Once we have the business, so very, very important that we capture the business process. Not only do we capture it, we must work with our BAs and with our BSAs or whoever our product owners to validate that did I capture this accurately? And then the product owners must take it to the business owners and the business teams and have everybody review it. Because if everybody is aligned on these steps, it becomes very easy to make the screenshots or the wireframes and the mockups later on. But if this piece is fundamentally wrong, what I see happen over and over is we have designed 10 screens, then we get feedback. How would it work? I did not think about it, or my understanding was different, or some maybe like we are working with 4 stakeholders in business. The fifth one, which we don't even know gets involved, would get involved later on when we go to QA and then say, you guys never understood this workflow, did you? So then we spent all the engineering effort to build that flow and it was never vetted with one party, which we missed out. And then we have to redo this again and again. So I cannot emphasize this point enough. Spend enough time mapping the user flow, task flows, and get everybody from business validated. It doesn't take too much time. It maybe it's a half-hour meeting, but getting that buy-in early would save you a lot of time and headache. And what the numbers you were saying, right? The 75% savings, where do they come from? They come from these things. When you do the stakeholder management upfront, when you understand and capture the requirements upfront, you save all that headache later. So once you have that done, now again, don't jump to wireframes and mockups yet. First, and this is my learning over last 5 years and working in the domain for like over a 10-year period, people may agree to the user flow. It makes sense. But let's say what I understand or what Bob understands or what Mr. Asad understands in a different department, they may have different things in mind. What is written here, they agree on. But once you start making an interface, you go into much more detail. This was 10,000 feet. When you start going lower in terms of feet, then everybody says, no, that's not how I imagined it to be. I thought it would be different. So it's important to keep people along the way. That's why wire flows are important. Now you would notice in wire flows, why they are not called mockups is because there's no design here. There's no detail, there's no copy, there's no detail on button. All it says is there will be a photo here. There will be 6 photos displayed below. You will click on one photo and it will go to photos page and how I will lay out these photos. If people have disagreement with how the layout is or how the screen flows are working, they should voice now. They can give you feedback now so that you save all that time later on in terms of mockups. So see, like we are keeping stakeholders involved throughout the process and checking with them. We wanted to design a Mercedes Benz, right? Yes. OK, great. This is what the feature set we agreed on, right? Yes, great. OK, next. This is how the door will look like. This is how the engine space will look like. This is the model of the car, right? I've not designed the dashboard yet. I've not designed the software yet, but I've gotten an agreement on how this beast will look like at a higher level. Then we go into user flows to our interaction level. So now you would see that from interaction level, we are putting in more fidelity into the wireframe. We are making it more and more realistic. So at this point, there were no brand colors either, because we don't want feedback on branding. That would be later. We can decide on look and feel once, and then that applies to every mockup. But what we are resolving here first is business process and user flow. Then we go. So this is the fidelity: user goal, task flow, wire flow to user flow. And yeah, user flow is, by the way, still not production ready mockup. So another view of the same thing, we have to evolve it from a thumbnail to a block frame to a wireframe to an interface and then the prototype. A prototype is the final production ready, which you will see in the production run. But if you do this right, Bob and Asad and everybody else in the team are with you throughout the journey and have given you an approval on step 4. So when you go to step 5, there should not be disagreements. It should be small changes that, yeah, have you thought about this hover button and this interaction? Is it accessible? Does it meet our brand standards? So on and so forth. But if they are giving you feedback on business flow doesn't work or this feature hasn't been thought through, that means it's not designed good. We have missed out all the opportunities to get feedback early on. Let me pause here. I know I covered a lot of things in a rush and like at a higher level, but let's have discussion here before I go to next sections. Does this make sense? Is that, have you seen this work or does it not work? Just feel free to say that this doesn't work.
Yeah. So Uzair, this is Rayaz. I have a question. So, depending on the size of team, sometimes the teams are much smaller and the projects are also much smaller. So if you're trying to save cost, would that going through all the steps obviously will make it right, but would that increase the cost in case of smaller projects, or are there some steps that can be considered based on the size of the project?
I would say that the overall theme and message stays. Number one, right? We should evolve it from rock frame to wireframe. But this all can be done over months if it's an enterprise project and a lot of different people have to give okay. But the same practice can be done in a week's time too. It doesn't take too much time. For example, how long would it take for you to map out the user persona? 1 day. You don't need to do user research interviews. Just understand what you know. Just ask your team members what you know of the user. Let's fill it out quickly. It would be an hour's activity or even 30-minute activity. Then let's say you have been given user stories. You map out the task flows. That is also a few hours of effort. Let's say the flow is, you're saying like smaller project, right? And I'm guessing it's 5 to 10 screens, let's say. If we map the task flow in few hours and get feedback, then move to mockups, it saves us the time and effort. That's what I'm trying to establish. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
So my core message is don't jump to mockup right away, even if it's a small project. Even if you're given 1 day to design that thing, still spend 2 hours to map out components and get feedback. And once you get the feedback, then go to mockup. That would be my like thumb rule. Any other questions?
So I have a question regarding the maybe there are some tools that we can use. I know all of these block frames and user flows, they can be done in a Word document as well. But
yeah,
do you know of any specific tools that are maybe in the market that lets you go through this process in a more streamlined way?
Yeah, there are a lot of tools. Balsamic used to be a very famous prototyping tool. So it also depends on who the person is who is driving this decision. What I've also seen is sometimes product owners are heavily driving this all the way to wireframe. So in that case, and then product owners are generally not very savvy in design tools like Sketch or Figma. So what I'm seeing increasingly, and my teams are using it very heavily, is the tool Miro. Miro, or there's another one, Mural as well. That tool lets you, it's like effectively a whiteboard. You can map journeys on it, you can map backlog on it, you can make quick wireframe prototypes, and you can even run it like sessions with the customer teams too. I can give you some let me show you some examples of that tool too, which I wanted to cover in the towards the later half, but let me show you right away. So this is, for example, Miro, right? And my product teams are using this, our architects are using it, our designers are using this, and this is how we work with our clients. We have to communicate to them how the user flow works, right? Because bear in mind, business owners do not understand user stories that much. User stories too much level detail. They don't go through backlog 100% of the time as well. For executives and for other people, visual things are very powerful. You can just walk them through the flow and they said, okay, I get it, how it works. And then you can go into the details of user stories. So for example, this is one startup we are working with, and we have mapped their entire user journey. They're like Uber, they're a Canadian startup. So notice this, they had an existing website. So this tool lets you capture, like screen scrape the website automatically. So it captures all their pages, and our product owners, our designers are now leaving comments here, for example. What are our findings? How can we do fixes? What are our recommendations? Then we even share this with business teams. So now the business team understands that, okay, if I click on become a rider, where does it take me? It takes you to this price plan. What happens when you click on sign up? It takes you to the next page. So you can literally draw these lines over this, and map out the entire user journeys. Now here also, these are, you will see these are the buckets we have given. This is the customer app experience, so the onboarding flow. Then findings, what are some recommendations? Finding is that it's automatically, there's no drop down for country. These are sort of the issues we are finding. Now, business team members can come in and also leave a sticky note here. We also set up a process and practice on what does the sticky mean. For example, it's a functional bug or it's a UI fix, it's a must have P1, P2. We do those triages later. But this tool also has great prototyping tools. So this is sort of the wireframe library here. And you can see on the screen, right? Left side. So it's giving you enough components ready-made, checkboxes, media buttons that you can get to what we were talking about as a wireframe. Does that answer the question?
So Uzair,
It does.
yeah. So Uzair, we're a Adobe shop, and so we started out many years ago. Started with Photoshop, Illustrator, and now almost every design is done in XD.
Yeah.
So but as you mentioned here, it appears that there are definitely all web-based tools that are maybe more friendlier than, Adobe XD requires certain level of skill to use it. And we do use a function that you say when you get the prototype on an online forum, you can add comments and those comments can be reviewed. So any is in your experience, is Adobe XD still one of the leading tools, or you think that there are other tools? We have a smaller team. We have a 3-people team for the designers, so we don't have a big team. So we can obviously change our tool set. What is your recommendation on that?
So I would say if it's working for you, continue working on it. Adobe XD is one of the good leading players in the market. When we started this design practice at our company, mobileLIVE, we were XD shop too. We were heavily using XD. It really helps you do this prototyping very fast. You can get all these comments from clients as well. Everything we are talking about here, you can do it in XD. So if it works, no need to change it. There's nothing wrong with it. But for example, Miro is meant for when you are expecting a lot of team, like when the team sizes increase and when you have to do a lot more documentation, then Miro helps you. But if you're asking me for cutting edge design tool, that's Figma. That's where the industry is, which Figma was nowhere there in the market 3 years ago, but now they are sort of the market leader. They have beaten Adobe, they have beaten InVision. But do you need to switch to it tomorrow? No.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we can have this conversation of course offline too, but I think it works. My point is follow this process. You can do this in any tool. Some tools are super good, some tools are not so good, but you can still do all of this in every tool that is in the market at the moment. It's just a discipline of how you're going about it.
Right. Uzair, I had another question. So when I asked you about the tools, I was primarily asking about not the actual wireframing or prototyping tool, which, as you mentioned, there are several examples. There's XD, there is Sketch, there is Figma, right? And those are all fine. But what I'm really interested in knowing is, how do we take a user, thinking about the user, translating the user story, making sure that the user is centric to all of the decisions involved in creating the wireframe, creating the screens and everything. But so in my mind, I'm actually a product owner here, and in my mind, the missing piece currently is that how do I think about the user, and basically put it in some form of a digital content, like we can use Word or something. But the tool that I was looking for, or maybe if you have an idea, is where do we create that mind map of just that user and all of the interactions that the user will go through.
Yeah, it's exactly. Sorry, somebody else had a question too.
No, hi, this is Aisha from design team, and I want to answer Amar's question. Amar, we've been using Miro for 3 years, not here, but before this. So this Miro thing offers a lot of the things, like you can create not only customer journeys, you can also come up with personas and all of the things that's required for a good user experience research. So this is a complete tool. This offers a lot.
I second you, and I was exactly going to say this was exactly my answer. So Amar, your go-to should be work with the design teams. If they're using Miro, like you already have the tool access. So for example, you can make stakeholder maps here. You will see all these templates are ready-made. It would save you a ton of time and effort to make things pretty. Just make it here. Who are my stakeholders? You need to make persona maps. They are here. Lots of templates of persona maps. You said mind maps, right? Mind maps, they have plenty of pre-filled templates. Do you want to make a backlog? That's also here. We also make backlogs here too for several of our key projects. So you will see here backlog example. PI planning, Kanban, user story map. Everything is sort of like existing here. So when you map the empathy maps, you map the user flows, right? And the next step is, how can I show this as my features and priorities? Here you go, there's a template. In some projects, we have even done this, that we have mapped them here, and then we hyperlink it when we start going to Jira for execution. We start hyperlinking it to Jira. Obviously, it's a bit of an overhead to maintain both different things, but you can start here, align with business, and then you can always have your dev team running out of Jira. So as a product owner, whatever you need, trust me, Miro has everything that you need.
It looks like it's a mix of Mind Manager, Visio,
Yes.
Word,
Yes,
XD,
Excel,
everything all together.
everything. So funny thing, this thing didn't exist 5 years ago, right? And it used to be there before COVID. But during COVID, they have grown tremendously. They've raised several rounds. And now suddenly this is a new product category, which no one thought that they need after Microsoft and after XD. No one thought that they need these kind of tools. But now every large organization we work with has Miro on top of the Microsoft and Visio and everything else too. So it's a new category of whiteboarding, and you can see here, all of us could be here right now working and brainstorming, putting in sticky notes, working together. So it's a great way to co-create and collaborate. Any other questions?
Yes,
I
Uzair.
have a question.
Go ahead.
I have a question. I'm a senior designer here at iENGINEERING. So I just wanted to ask is that what do you prefer, like this requirement gathering and all this process of gathering information and creating the user flows and everything? Is it preferred or recommended that the designers should by themselves they should do that, or there should be all of the stakeholders which are involved in the requirement gathering? So everybody should input, or just the designers should design all of these things?
Number one, right? It's a team sport. User experience is a team sport. So as much as you can co-design and collaborate, that is the way to go. But you may not. I don't have full view of how things are at engineering, but you will not get there to a full collaborative team on next day. So it's a journey. But my suggestion is the product designer should work with product owner first level. They should both be involved, yes. I don't really know whether in your case product managers or owners continue till wireframing and then hand it over to you. If that's the case, you need to start working with them, gradually collaborate, and then get yourself plugged in a little bit early. So when you are making prototypes, you have more and more context of the user. And in terms of stakeholders, yes, I do highly recommend to get feedback early and often from the business stakeholders and our clients. Educate them. This is not fully mock-up ready yet. I'm showing you the homework. Are you okay giving me feedback on early? Many people will not be comfortable. They'll say, come back to me when it's done, right? But then if you educate them, explain to them, so don't look at the look and feel, just give me feedback if this functionality makes sense. Gradually, you will level up your teams and the client teams to go to a practice where people are giving feedback throughout the journey and it becomes core design. Hope that answers your question. It's not like it won't be like next day I'll tell you designers should do everything or everybody should work together. It will take some time, but have these conversations going. Somebody else says I had a question too.
Yeah, Uzair, this is Munib from iENGINEERING. I'm working with the business development and operations team here at iENGINEERING. So, not really a question, but more like a concern. I wanted to discuss with you and Race about the subjectivity of the design. Um, design has been and will always be a subjective term, right? So, something that's appealing to one user may not appeal to another one.
Yeah.
This is true for colors. This is true for the debate between more text versus more graphics and so on. So I just wanted to ask you that based on your experience and exposure with different companies, how do you neutralize the subjectivity of the design during this prototyping stages? Like, are there any tips and tricks, or are there any shortcuts, or like how to reach to that optimum balance while working with users to neutralize the subjectivity?
Very, very good question. There's no simple answer, unfortunately. Um, you very rightly said it's very subjective, right? Some people may have used one app or other. They really like it. They think they're the user. Now you will see, you will say that I'm sounding more like an agile coach who use these pet words. You are not the user, right? And users are in all flavors and shapes and have different preferences. But so teams which are not so mature in terms of product thinking or users thinking, you would see opinions, right? Everybody tries to enforce their opinion. No, I don't think this is right, because it doesn't work. In teams which are high performing in product, they would say, okay, could you explain why would this not work? And they would say, I don't think so. But the conversation needs to shift from I to say, what type of user are you speaking for, right? What type of user are you speaking for? So we understand what user problem you are trying to identify. Now there's other comments on look and feel and copywriting, right? There's less scroll, too much scroll. Some business teams want everything on one page. And then the designers are feeling that this is not really a good practice. This also takes time and education. But here's what I'm going to recommend to designers, to product owners, to also the teams which are working with clients, is do your homework. If you're making those things on Miro, for example, or Word or PowerPoint, doesn't matter, right? What tool you use. Explain your thinking, do the research. You would find several articles which would explain to you that as we are moving through the journey, each and every page, we will see drop-offs. In case of enterprise, people drop-offs are different, but like business users have to finish the task anyway. But in case of business users, it's basically more clicks we are adding or more scroll we are adding for the user, more time we are consuming. So if you have that research categorized, for example, many times our designers ran into this problem of they were recommending up one thing per page for a B2C application where we have one field available to the user, and then when they click on it, either the page scrolls or we go to the next page. But the client was thinking this is too many pages. They had a perception that too many pages means bad user experience. So we showed them different examples of different apps who are implementing that standard and why are they doing it. So sometimes you have to educate whoever the stakeholders. I'm not saying all clients are bad, by no means I'm saying that. It can be a product owner too who may be very opinionated. So establish your thinking by showing your research. And again, don't marry to the research too. Sometimes business owners know something which we don't. So establish your case by saying, I am suggesting this based on prior research. If we do it this way, the fear or the hypothesis is that users will spend too much time doing this, or XYZ, the usability count or the click-through count would be less. So they understand it. If they don't, and the team decides and discusses, move on with it, right? Not everything is perfect, and we can't always keep fighting about good user experience. Like you said, it's subjective too. Not sure if I answered your question also very directly, but there's no rocket science to it. There's a lot of education. Don't argue, right. I'm right. Product designers, don't argue I'm right. Explain your thinking by showing your homework.
Right. Yeah. So to conclude, it's an iterative process which needs research, knowledge, and then a lot of communication also with the product owners or the clients or whoever we are dealing with.
Absolutely. And again, going back to product fundamentals, if some bad decision is made, it's okay, right? How we will find it and fix it? We should have analytics. When we go to users and when we get user feedback, either the analytics are telling us that users are spending too much time on it or they're not moving to the next step, or we should get feedback directly from the business users in terms of where the challenges and pain points were.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
There two questions. I think one is a small question you can answer right away, but the other one, if you think it fits in your scheme, then do it. Otherwise, you can do it offline also. The simple question is, when you create these personas of users, do you also create personas for the client?
Could you explain that in a?
So for example, a user may be a construction worker who will be using the website, right? Or in your example, in traffic count, the guy sitting at the station who is doing the traffic count. But a client is an individual or a company who is paying for that development, right? Sometimes, do you create a persona? What is the preferences of that, or the skill set of that client? Do you create a persona for them also? Because many times the decisions are made may not be best for the user, but are based on the understanding of the customer.
Yeah, understood. We don't make personas for the clients in that way. I think this is where the client facing teams are very important. They need to come in. I think there's a very important role for this team to communicate to the designers and explain to them that, folks, we agreed we would follow good practices, but in this situation, we are dealing with an organization who are probably not very advanced in user experience. So I understand what you are saying, but we have to deal with the client, right? So we don't, in short answer, we don't make persona for the client, but I think the front facing teams from iENGINEERING need to do this piece of communication. When they're onboarding designers and the other people, they need to walk them through what is their maturity level, what are the preferences that they have. I think that's the way to go. One more thing which I found very useful, which is slightly related but not exactly, is the POs and the client-facing teams. You can also save a lot of time by asking your designers before doing the work, make mood boards. Mood boards are like, client may come, I want something like Uber, right? Okay, great. You want Uber. When you make Uber, they'll say, no, I don't want this. So rather than that, say, okay, you wanted something like this. These are screenshots of Uber. These are screenshots of Lyft. These are screenshots of another application, which, by the way, I think is a better fit for you because of your requirements. Which ones make more sense? So read the room, give them a mood board and ask them to rank or score things, because people have hard time communicating what is in their brain. But when they see things, they can say this is good or this is bad. But if we do this again earlier towards thumbnail rather than prototype, then it saves you a lot of time and effort. Does that make sense?
Okay.
What was your second question?
Yeah, my second question is, when we are trying to hire people who know user experience, the way I think is you have to be a good graphic designer, then you have to be a good UI designer. You understand the controls and different elements that you put on these web pages or application screens, and then you become an experienced designer. And for the experienced designer, one of the things I think is most important is understanding the business. So that's where the challenge comes in, because good designers, graphic designers, UI designer, when they become the experienced designer, they don't have the subject level knowledge of whatever is being done. So how do you give them the subject knowledge so that they can actually do a really good user experience?
This is a bit tricky question. Let me go back here, right? So start with the bottom of the line. So UI, you said, right? UI, right? Yes, and this is the reality. Many of the designers are coming from arts background. So they are visual designers. And you, as you were saying, right, they don't understand the operations. You will see here, the visual designer line is not going to operations strategy, or they're not even doing a lot of research. They're just doing ideation, design, implementation. So in that case, you need to pair them up with a UX strategist who is doing understanding business operation strategy. This could be a very well a product owner too. Different organizations have different functions who are doing that job. So if you have strong visual design people, you need to pair them with very strong product owners who do that work. Gradually bring visual designers to left. Product designer is where the market is heading towards. Product designers then start understanding business, but no one, there are no very less number of people are true product designers. They're either on the UX side or on the art side, depending on whether they're coming from engineering or arts. My advice would be, initially, if you're building a team, you should have at least few people who are very good in UI and few people who are good in UX. But when you're pairing them gradually, they're learning from each other and they're moving towards product design. That's one way to go about it. So if you keep hiring from arts background, you would have to coach them and teach them a lot of these left side stuff. But if you have at least one person who's here, may not be very good in UI, they can get you up to wireframes, and then a visual designer can pair them up and take the work from there. That's typically how I have built and structured teams. Now we are gradually moving towards product designer model.
Thank you.
Okay, I know we have a lot more stuff to cover, but let me see which ones I can cover. I do want to cover journey maps, but it would take a little bit more time. Let me spend like 30 seconds onto the journey map, and we can have follow-up sessions on these if needed. Now, journey maps, how are they different from task flows? Task flows were very, very surface level in a way that what we did is, what are the steps the user has to take? When we are going towards B2C kind of applications or applications which require a lot more thinking of user experience, then journey maps come into picture. This is where we can map the process and also capture users' pain points onto them. So you are seeing here, this is a journey map of a user buying mobile plan from telecom company. What are different stages? They have to, first they define, they review the current plan, they would go to the website, they would define the parameters, play with it, how much bandwidth I need, how much data I need, how many minutes do I need, and then see the comments here. These comments are as if you are reading the customer's mind. You are really building empathy with them. And the customer is saying, as a company, we want to upsell them. We want to sell them unlimited plan or the highest package, premium package. But what they are thinking in their mind is, I wonder if I can pay less. Do I really need that much data, right? So journey map visualizes the user's thinking and their emotion. What is this line doing? This line is their emotional graph. So they are excited. They started in the define phase, but then they found there's so many configurations and so many plans and deal and discount that they are like, okay, this seems like a lot of different research that I have to do. So the emotions are going down now. They were excited to get onto a service, but they did a lot of research, so emotion is going down. Then finally they found something, the emotion goes up. Now here they are comparing against different vendors or different telecom companies. Then they're going to negotiate, and then they're going to select and pay out. I know it didn't convey the whole message, but maybe that's for sometime later. But journey maps are a natural progression for bit complex projects. Smaller projects, we don't really need journey maps that much. But if you're building large scale applications, journey maps come into picture. And journey maps go to story maps, which is what I think one of the product owners asked me the question, and I showed you one template, right, on Miro. That is sort of a story map. That what you could do is, this was our journey, shop, decide, checkout, satisfaction. And if the business teams understand journey map, they know which bucket we are in, right? And when we say in shop, these were the 20 features that were highlighted. 3 are critical, so I'm moving them into the phase 1. The rest are into the backlog. So that's how these story maps are effective for communication purposes. So I do want to cover slightly the design systems point. So I think, Riaz, your question was also on UI, right? What I'm seeing increasingly in the market is that the design function UI is getting more and more automated. Why is it getting automated? Because when the web was not that mature, everybody had to build components from scratch. Right now, we are at a stage where we should not and must not build components from scratch. Designers should not think of a button and how it would work in hover or how it would function from scratch. It's almost stupidity because there are so many great building blocks in open source that are available, or Microsoft or whatever design system you pick up, that literally we should. So that's why I meant, right? Spend your time in user experience, because UI components are ready made available now. When we have figured out the user experience, we can just put in those components and map the layout of the web design and build ready-made components for that. So what is design systems? Design systems are like tools, libraries, kits. For designers, there are toolkits. Let's say you as a company are deciding we are Microsoft shop, so we will stay close to Fluent. Then Fluent has design kits available in XD. Use those design kits to build your experience. Do not reinvent it. Yes, those kits would be on a different look and feel, but every component can be changed to a new brand color and identity for your clients. Don't reinvent the button for every client. Otherwise, it's a lot of custom coding and a lot of cost, which is useless, frankly. Because again, let's remind you, Steve Jobs said, design is how it works, not how much fancy that interaction button was, because no one cares. They cares about getting their work done. So the design system concept, this is where the market is moving, is like this. We should have ready-made atoms, which is what these kits offer and the Fluent would offer to you. Make molecules, then organisms, then templates, and then pages. So that's where the industry is moving towards. And as a result, what is happening is, let me skip this part. This is what I want to show you. Before design systems use, a lot of time went into development and UI. But as organizations are learning the importance and value of design systems and using these ready-made components, you would see development time has shrunk, probably not a whole lot, but you can see UI time is cut in half, because now you don't have to think about how that button will look and feel and then custom design it from scratch. You're building the design kit, borrowing it, and then just adapting it to the brand guide. But you will notice one more thing, the time spent on UX has increased. So this is what design systems do. In the same amount of week that you were given to design an experience, you could have spent 1 day thinking and 4 days designing, but now we are shifting towards 4 days thinking to 1 day UI because the starter kit was already there.
Yes. Uzair, we're out of time. This two quick questions, maybe they're one word answer. Should we decide on the design system upfront or at a later stage? And also, should we do the brand guide before or at the end?
So design system, we should absolutely design at the start. And this is where organizations make a very critical mistake of not having developers and tech leads involved early in the conversation. Every time I see that we have made the UI and then the tech lead says, oh, to code this is this much time and effort. We should do from first principles. What is the right design system? And then we agree as a team that if we build this experience in so and so design kit or tool or whatever code library that is available, it will save us time. Once that decision is made, now the designers should use even components and interactions from that library. And then when they're doing handoff to developers, they should say, I am imagining hover functionality or accessibility or this much, which is, by the way, specified in your library. So you're not custom coding it, it's exactly as in the library. So that's one. And the brand identity should also be captured early on when we are doing the mood board exercise. That is where the branding activity should be done. So branding is independent of the UX flows, which we talked about. So get the branding out of the way and then do the UX flow. And then when you're making the final mockup, the design elements with the branding would come in and you would just implement the high fidelity mockup.
Because essentially we'll have to obviously do that. What you're saying is design system decision upfront, and immediately following that, the branding guide, and then do all the other work.
That's what my learning is. When we make mockups and make brand guide decision at the end, and the branding was off, guess what? We have to change 400 screens or 200 screens. Too late. So why don't we get these heavy things out of the door really quickly? Make 2 mockup pages on branding and show them examples and settle it.
Right. Just from I think anybody who is from our guest side, any questions there?
Hello, this is Olga. I'm, I guess, a person working with iENGINEERING, designing a software. The software is intended to be used on either mobile device or on a laptop. And the discussions we have about the libraries to be used, so the user experience, and it will be used outdoor in the field at a remote location, would be, satisfactory. And that experience obviously is different than if you're sitting in front of a big computer screen in the office. And do you have any suggestions how to design applications like that, as far as how to select an appropriate library that will work outdoor as well as in the office environment, but primarily for use in outdoor in the field environment?
Yeah, I think this is where design systems really help, Olga. If the libraries are, I think these are the conversations you should have with tech leads and the product owners who should give you indication of whether these libraries have been used in applications which were for your use cases, like, for example, outdoors, right? If they are, then I would suggest is to pick those libraries because they have built-in accommodations of those things. For example, contrast ratios, right? In sunlight, we need certain contrast ratios to be followed. So those libraries have solved those problems already. So my guidance here would be to pick the libraries which are better suited for your use cases. That is where we should start the project. I don't know if I answered your specific question.
Yes, you did, and indeed, it's a very good recommendation. I really appreciate you laying out the flow of development of a software product. It makes a lot of sense. So, and thank you, Riaz, for inviting for this webinar. That was great.
Welcome. Thanks, Olga, for joining. Okay, I think if there's no further questions, thank you very much, Uzair, and I'm sure there'll be a bunch of follow-up emails that'll be coming from our side. We may do another one down the line sometime, but thank you very much, and thank you everyone for attending. Bye-bye.
Yeah, happy to answer any questions as follow-up. If people have questions, please feel free to route to me over email. We can respond to them. Yeah, and if there are further conversations open to them. Thank you so much for doing this.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.